Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about a number of old, played out, seemingly passé terms which social justice warriors just won't stop dwelling on. I hate to repeat myself here too much too, and while I always strive to find news stories and topics to discuss for you guys, we also can't ignore the old ones either, especially considering two important factors here. First, these liberal propaganda terms aren't going anywhere anytime soon, especially if we keep letting them go. So as long as the left keeps pushing such falsehoods, we have to keep batting them down too, because for the second reason, their rhetoric is starkly aggressive against us and other innocent people who just don't deserve it. And for today's issues, both terms have a specific anti-male flavor to them, as is common when dealing with liberal buzzwords made by feminists like this. Then, to make matters even worse here, what alerted me to these videos in question today was you guys kept commenting on one of my previous videos, the one about Women's Month, and you were saying you were getting ads featuring this new SJW group called F Factor. They have a small YouTube channel you could see here, and it's run by some wannabe life coach cougar lady who is actually really easy on the eyes, but nevertheless, her company is pushing some pretty ridiculous, pretty regressive SJW stuff, and it's getting slapped right onto my very own videos. Now, I don't mind getting the ad revenue, of course, but I do take umbrage with the spreading of false information, especially when it's stuff that's anti-men. So I've got three short video examples from F Factor to share with you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started by looking at the first one, which has to do with them calling out catcalling. Check this one out.
This is the words we should get away from, like darling, sweetheart, honey, sugar pie. It's like, what are you trying to order, a cake?
Actually, my mom calls me and my siblings honey all the time. Really don't see the problem with it. Sure, maybe I used to blush as a kid when it was said in public in front of my friends or something, but come on, these are terms that are typically used by people close to us as an affectionate way to show they care. Now, if you're using them in public to random strangers, like calling your waitress sweetheart or something, sure, that's a bit different and far more cringy and possibly offensive. But also, I would hardly say it's the end of the world either. Usually it's just some old man saying it because he doesn't really know any better anymore. Typically, it's not a mean or demeaning thing in the slightest. Just some people talking in some way. But I think overall, my greater point about all of this really is these claims the girls are making in their F Factor sponsored video, they're just not very relevant. I highly doubt anyone is really using these phrases much at all. And what few occurrences there are out there, they're hardly war crimes, and most importantly, they're not significant or prevalent or happening enough that they're worth mentioning. Lastly, before moving on here, this girl in the video, her shtick is terribly unfunny. She's desperately reaching to make a joke work here, and it's really hard to watch. Not to mention, she's about to make us question everything she says too, so without further ado, let's go ahead and carry on.
You don't know if I have diabetes. Maybe that offends me. I am not your cupcake, okay? If anything, I'm like a hot steak that you gotta eat right away, because if you don't, you're gonna get salmonella.
Okay, for one, I don't think that's how salmonella works. You either cook the food enough to kill that germ or you didn't. How fast you eat the steak afterwards shouldn't matter. And I don't think steaks have salmonella, that's more for chicken. But regardless, I wouldn't necessarily call this woman a steak or cupcake or anything anyway. She looks more like a bunch of bananas with that yellow sweater on. Or you might call her a lemon because she is pretty bitter. Regardless, I'm starting to highly doubt anyone is really calling her any of this stuff anyway. Most of these phrases imply they come from one of two places. As mentioned earlier, usually it's a relative or friend being familial and affectionate, a situation where most would not mind these terms being used like that unless you're just some big asshole. Then the other place someone might say this is when a guy might be trying to flirt with a girl or something. And well, that brings us to the next issue here. First of all, flirting isn't inherently bad or evil or terrible, despite what modern feminists and their hysterics might suggest, especially in this Me Too era. Next, and I'm trying to put this as kindly as possible, but do we really think this lady in this F Factor video is getting a lot of male suitors? Because I'm willing to bet the only attention she gets from men comes when they accidentally mistake her for an NFL defensive lineman or something.
Because if you don't, you're gonna get salmonella. Catcalling? F that!
Okay, I guess that's it. I thought they were going to have more to say about the actual catcalling, since that's the title and basis for this whole ad apparently, but no. Instead, this chick just complains about being called endearing phrases that show affection and interest, like sweetheart or cupcake. And then at the end, she just says catcalling out of nowhere, really loud, and then it ends abruptly. Kind of strange and misleading and very wrong too. First of all, using endearing, albeit somewhat cringy nicknames, that's not the same as catcalling at all. I can see how you would transition to there, but in this case, the video didn't really make a transition. As I said, they just abruptly said catcalling after talking about nicknames. And if it were me, I would certainly focus on the ending of this bit more, since the catcalling complaint is far stronger than girls being upset about someone calling them honey. As previously stated, most of the time those phrases don't mean much at all. Some guy at a restaurant could just say, hey, honey, can you pass the salt? And that's not a big deal, really, unless you're uptight and looking for a fight. But if the same guy was yelling across the street to a woman saying, come over here and give me some sugar, honey, well, that is certainly far different and possibly crossing a line. And this latter example is what catcalling really is too. And it of course varies depending on the situation and the context. But usually, I will admit, catcalling can be a bit forward and sometimes even outright offensive if done inappropriately. But no catcall is the same either. And while our last example there still sounded nice, albeit a bit forward, but another catcaller could really cross a line saying something more offensive or abusive, or perhaps even threatening the woman if they don't comply. And while I'm sure all of these varieties of catcalling maybe could be happening out there somewhere, but I do think the greater point of this is the problem of catcalling is largely exaggerated and hardly worth mentioning since it's not happening that much. Most catcalling is playful and harmless anyway, and ladies can easily ignore it and walk away if they want to. As for the small percentage of this that's less friendly and possibly sinister, well, that can be dealt with by the police quickly and swiftly too. The cops will happily charge the perpetrators with abuse or harassment if need be. But back to this F-Factor advertisement video, and well, you can tell they're not even talking about the worst kind of illegal catcalling. They're just salty about men playfully calling girls honey and cupcake from time to time. And that's because this video is less about defending helpless women and protecting them from actual danger, and it's more about bashing men and putting us down and telling us what we can say and do. Our next F-Factor ad and video furthers this point immensely too, as it highlights and misrepresents the significance of yet another SJW phrase that's also starkly anti-male. This time we're going to be discussing mansplaining again. So let's turn to the clips and see what these wackadoos have to say about this one.
Hi, I'm Natasha, and I'm reading a real tweet about mansplaining. So this person wrote, mansplaining is fake, you woman-splainer, LOL. So that's helpful because that is a man who explained the tweet of mansplaining to me.
Yeah, well, that tweet is right. Mansplaining is a fake made-up feminist word used to shut down and silence men. If mansplaining was a true thing, then also that would mean women who explain things are women-splainers too. And the fact that you ignore or seem to possibly deny that reality really says a lot. What it shows me is you hold classic liberal double standards here. And this is yet another case of it's okay when liberals do it too, because according to them it is. They can call men out for speaking or explaining, but we can't do it to them, at least in their sick and messed up worldviews, which are filled with more double standards than we can keep track of. And also, wouldn't it be considered sexist if we made a term about women and used it to shut them down when they talk to us? For example, if I went around saying girls are femsplaining or girl nagging or woman whining, surely that would be called sexist against them. But going the other way around, and SJWs can not only be sexist and biased and offensive to men openly and in public without cause for concern, but even worse, they get encouraged to do this. And even commercials like this get made and promoted and shared across the internet day after day, all the way up until now in current year, despite them being proven wrong and pushed back against for almost 4 or 5 years now.
So now we're back to mansplaining. It's kind of like we don't know what began and what ended. It's just a perfect circle of mansplaining. Mansplaining? F that.
This says you supposedly want to spread positivity with these F-Factor videos, but all I see is you doing completely the opposite. Telling men they can't use certain phrases isn't spreading positivity, just like how telling us we're wrong and not allowed to speak isn't positive either. Seriously, you girls are being disingenuous and incongruent as all hell, saying one thing and doing another, pretending to want justice and fairness, but actually demanding special treatment for yourselves, the women, and lesser treatment of others, particularly men. And as for the mansplaining complaint here again, well, nothing shows it doesn't mean what they claim more than this silly little video. Here we just saw this feminist SJW chick read a tweet, which is supposedly real. I doubt that, but let's assume it is. And, well, all the tweet even said was, mansplaining is fake, you womansplainer, LOL. Then the best comeback this third-rate wannabe comedian could come up with was, no you, essentially flipping it back on them because they can't think of anything better. Then this girl doubled down and said the tweet was mansplaining too, even though there's very little, if any, explaining going on here. And if I actually took the term mansplaining seriously, I would at least try to make it a more specific thing in my presentation. For example, a girl might say a guy is mansplaining to her if they try and tell her how to start a car and give her directions to a location that's close by and she's already been to many times. And if they do so in a very rude and condescending way, that could be considered mansplaining. It hits all the marks and could possibly be an example I'd get behind too in an alternate universe. Because here you got a guy telling a girl how to do something simple and obvious in a rude and pushy way. So maybe you could call that mansplaining possibly if we gave them some ground and allow this made-up term to pass in certain situations. But that's the thing here. When SJWs actually bring up mansplaining, they're almost never referring to anything close to this actual definition. Really, feminists just say mansplaining when a guy says something they don't like. They don't even have to be explaining or saying anything specifically offensive either. You could simply say you didn't like the Black Panther movie, and an SJW might say that's mansplaining just because they disagree with you. And well, that's how I see this example in this F Factor video too, because the tweet really didn't say or explain very much at all, if anything. But because this girl in the video disagreed with it, she dubbed it mansplaining, and boom, it's now been discredited and hand waved away, giving us the perfect example of how this term is really used by people like this. And it's not in the way the term was intended to be used at all, or in a way that's rational or reasonable like how its perpetrators lead on here. Finally, we have one last video with all the girls featured, plus one more from this F Factor crew. Apparently, they're doing this woke virtue signaling to try and promote their all-female comedy show. Kind of a oxymoron when you think about it, but let's check out this last BS promo video anyway.
Hi, I'm Yamanika Saunders.
Hi, I'm Natasha Vainblatt.
Hey, I'm Carrie Coddett.
Join me on March 11th in New York City for F Factor's F That, a comedy show with no balls, except for mine, where myself and a whole lineup of amazing female comedians will be tackling women's issues through humor.
Tackling women's issues through humor sounds like a terrible night to me. Glad we all missed that, huh? I am curious what those alleged women's issues actually were though. Not to say there are no issues that exist at all for women, but if you're going to lead off with nothing burgers like catcalling and mansplaining, that would certainly indicate your issues aren't that severe, or quite possibly they're not even worth mentioning at all. Really, you sound like a bunch of whiners who are never happy. Or worse, you sound like you're looking for issues to have so hard that you've started to make them up. Lastly, could you imagine holding an all-male version of this comedy event? Because I highly doubt a comedy show bragging about having no ovaries would ever happen or be promoted. And I'm sure SJWs like this would do their best to ruin a show like that. Or at the very least, they would force some of their preferred kinds of people into it because, of course, they can't stand men and us doing or saying what we please in our own spaces. What do you guys think? Are catcalling or mansplaining really terrible things we need to worry about? Are these even really big, prevalent issues worth talking about anymore in 2020? Because I know I haven't seen anyone catcall a person in many, many years. And when I did, it was just done as a joke and no one was hurt and there was no issues. And as for mansplaining, it very rarely happens in the ways the term applies specifically. So I really doubt it means what they think it means. But you guys tell me what you think and comment all your thoughts below this video. And thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel and we'll see y'all next time.